All right. So I'm going to move on here. So then our next up is for Wanda Gray and Nick Hall from Blackboard to share about this topic, equity of access in a digital learning environment. So excited to have them both. Hi, Wanda. And hi, Nick. I can see you're there, but I don't see your video. Oh, there you are. Okay, awesome.
Hi.
All right. So I'm going to let you guys share. Go ahead. Let's hear from you. I know there's been so much change. I just watched Blackboard when we were in Orlando live, and all the people from Puerto Rico came over. It was amazing. It was amazing. So go ahead. Over to you guys.
Okay, well, just first of all, I just want to thank you so much for giving us this wonderful opportunity to convene with everyone today. We are so happy to be here. As you mentioned, I am Wanda Gray. I am the K-12 Regional Account Executive with Blackboard. And of course, Blackboard is an education technology company that really focuses on using education technology within teaching and learning and within community engagement to really support student engagement and communications across the country. So I am joined today by Nick Hall, who is our solutions engineer, as well as our client success advocate. And together we do work very closely with K-12 schools and districts, with superintendents and district leaders to really understand how to power up learning with technology. And so today, our focus really is, our focus on our topic today is really about equity of access in digital learning environments. And so really what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about this, this premise. And the premise for our discussion really is the understanding that we know that educational communities are always striving to put forth positive culture and supportive learning environments to really support all students. And we place emphasis on all students and families. And with that, there is an imperative and there is a desire to really understand what that means when we talk about digital content. And so in our presentation today, we just really want to focus on sharing, building that awareness in districts and at the school-based level about what is digital access of information relative to the content that lives and breathes on websites, as well as instructional materials within learning management systems, and really how to instill some knowledge and best practices when we think about teachers and administrators and content creators as they are making the information equally accessible and inclusive to all students. So just in our little presentation here today, we're going to touch on that. Nick is going to walk us through our presentation to really talk about that. And we just hope that everyone will kind of walk away with a deeper knowledge and understanding of how you can kind of go back and share that with your educational community and maybe begin to look at this digital access through a different lens when it comes to the content and how we're supporting all students and families. Okay, so if there's no questions with that, I'll just turn the presentation over to Nick to kind of walk us through this.
All right, thank you so much, Wanda.
Certainly.
So when we look at equity of access in a digital learning environment, we first need to understand what sort of challenges students, parents, and any other end users might face. So we're going to start with some classification of accessibility challenges. So we have cognitive disabilities, and this can impact as many as 25% of the population. It includes things like dyslexia, ADHD, autism, PTSD, and others. These individuals struggle to concentrate, process information, and solve problems. Visual disabilities don't just include complete blindness, but also low vision, color blindness, partial blindness, seizure sensitivity. These individuals might rely on devices from eyeglasses and contacts to screen readers, and many struggle to see colors or read content. Colors, contrast, and even using images to convey information can create challenges for people with visual disabilities. This is something that I didn't think about when I was on the institution side, but physical disabilities. With a higher focus on accessibility, this is something that I've really come to learn about a lot further. Lost limbs, limited mobility, fine and gross motor control, or even paralysis. And many people with physical disabilities are often struggle to explain what they're unable to do when problems arise with access. And they too use assistive technology like eye tracking software, mouth sticks, foot pedals, and thumb clickers to navigate digital content. And then hearing disabilities, challenges ranging from slight hearing loss to total deafness. They have to use assistive devices like hearing aids and interpreters and captions in videos and multimedia. And even with these, however, it can be difficult to look down and take notes, therefore missing certain text on the screen. And many students have specific requirements for accommodations that have to be made so that they can engage in their educational process, such as an alternative accessible format of content. Oftentimes, schools and districts are more than willing to provide the alternative accessible content, but the process the student has to go through and the length of time it takes to create that alternative format delays the student's ability to engage in meaningful conversation with their peers or to prepare for exams. And in the same vein, our end users that are not students, say a parent who wants to help their child with their homework, might not have the option to request a necessary alternative format of a given document, or even worse, they might not know how they even could request it. A very significant challenge with reactionary workflow, and that's responding to accessibility needs as they arise rather than getting in front of them, is that it only enhances the experience for the person making the request, as opposed to providing all end users alternative ways of engaging with your content. It excludes any that aren't aware of that workflow inherently. It excludes students that choose not to disclose their disability or who aren't aware of their need. And it excludes parents or community members with whom the district is unaware of an existing disability. We often think of accessible content as content that caters to those with a disability, but end users without disabilities who simply want to view content in a different way, whether it's listening to a document as an audio file while they're on the go, or having semantic HTML because maybe they don't have a laptop and they want to view it on their phone so they can read it more easily. That often gets overlooked. And that's where accessibility closely connects with equity and usability. Accessibility is about providing better equity of access to everyone. And we found that there can be a significant challenge, especially for instructors who weren't used to creating digital content before the pandemic, or those who aren't used to creating equitable content for those with special needs, around the awareness and understanding of the needs of users with a disability and the impact inaccessible content has on those end users. Several instructors have also shared that they don't feel there's sufficient guidance in knowing how to meet those accessibility needs. While most districts provide links to accessibility resources on their website and have extraordinary disability services departments, those resources can end up being very disconnected from a teacher's existing workflow and the systems that they use to create and share the digital course content with their students. And it's that disconnect that gives rise to the perceived lack of guidance and general lack of awareness and understanding of how to create accessible content. And we look at challenges at the district level. One of the major challenges is that it tends to be extremely difficult for a district to have a good understanding of how they're performing regarding digital accessibility and in equitable content. There's a lot of content being made in both on the website and in learning management systems on a variety of topics, and new content being created daily. And the lack of insight can create a number of challenges in evaluating, monitoring, and remediating content. And it's often difficult to even make a case for accessibility and the needs for improvements in general. So as I mentioned, when students request accessible alternative formats of content, Disability Services Department then typically goes through a very manual, labor-intensive, and time-consuming fire drill of a process to provide that student the accessible content that they need. And that reactionary approach often creates a difficult situation to manage and provide timely support. We partner with Project Tomorrow, which is a national education nonprofit whose mission is to support the effective implementation of research-based learning experiences for students in K-12 schools. Project Tomorrow is particularly interested in the role of digital tools, content, and resources in supporting students' development of college and career readiness skills. And their Speak Up research project for 2020-2021 focused on engagement, empowerment, and equity in education. And it took a pointed look at the shift for students from in-class to virtual learning. So as we take a look at the data presented on this slide, the positive views listed by students on the value of virtual learning were really consistent regardless of the student's existing school format when they took the survey. For example, 63 students in fully virtual classes last year said a top benefit was being able to learn at your own pace. 64% of students in fully in-person classes said the same thing. And 68% of students that were the students that were doing both face-to-face and virtual learning said that the top benefit was learning at your own pace. And all of the benefits in this column here share a common focus on how virtual learning changes the student learning experience, including putting a higher value on self-directed learning. But as the benefits of virtual learning revolve around student agency, if students aren't provided with equitable access to the tools that would help them direct their learning experience, then the quality of that experience wanes significantly, as we can see on this slide. For students in each learning environment, the primary challenge with virtual learning was that it didn't fit the way some students learn. Now, that isn't to say that that's true for everyone. What I don't have present on this slide is that 27% of students surveyed who had experienced a virtual classroom said that a virtual environment was their preferred way of learning. And even 16% of students in a fully in-person setting would have preferred a virtual classroom setting fully. And that should bring us to the conclusion that the question to ask ourselves isn't, should we continue providing online learning options, but rather, what can we do to make sure that the online learning experience that we're offering is a high quality experience that leverages the best practices in the field? And how can we make sure that that learning experience is available to all students who want or need that type of learning? The Speak Up project concludes that schools and districts have gauged the efficacy of technology used for too long by measuring the number of devices deployed or frequency of product usage. And those measures explain the what of how technology is being used, but they don't tell a complete picture of how it's used to impact student outcomes or teacher effectiveness. And this was very evident during school closures, where more devices were deployed than ever before, but the quality of the teaching and the learning experience using those devices was not always satisfactory. So we need to reframe our language from the nouns of technology use to the verbs of impact that explain how digital tools can be used effectively to support deeper learning. This requires a new emphasis on supporting the development of teachers' competencies and comfort using digital resources to not only engage students, but to create new learning experiences that equitably address student needs. Technology holds the promise of leveling the playing field for students, but that can only happen if our focus is on the equity of the learning experience using technology, not just a mere presence of it in the classroom. So what can we do to address digital equity in the classroom? Well, before we get into the specifics of the what of accessible content, we need to discuss an important first step. Why do you want to improve your digital content accessibility? Are you simply trying to check a box so that you can say your learning environment is accessible? Or are you striving to create a fully effective learning experience for all of your students and end users that provides equitable access for the full range of materials and information that you offer? In the images that we see on this slide, a woman is providing signing services to a song. And on the left, we have the checking of the box approach. Simply signing the word music. And this is totally acceptable, but it's not in the spirit of equitable access. In the image on the right, we see not just the signing, but the expressing of the nature of the music being played. And this helps hearing impaired people get the full experience. And this is what you should be striving for as you work towards accessibility in your digital learning environments. The first major step in addressing accessibility is deciding to think inclusively about the content we're pushing out for consumption. As we look at the content and materials we want to share with our end users, we need to be mindful of a few things to ensure that we're thinking inclusively. One, choose what to publish and how. Would this content be better as a document, a video, embedded content, a link, or something else entirely? And are we able to make sure that content that we wish to share can be pushed out in an accessible format? Second, choose what not to publish. GIF files, as I'm going to show here, are notorious for being accessibility red flags. GIFs often have flashing images. They're unable to be paused. They rarely have alt tags. So consider instead using a flat image file or a video to reach a similar result to what you will with a GIF. I know this waving flag looks nice right now, but I promise if I leave it on the screen for too long, it's going to get really irritating and you won't have a way to stop it. Occasionally, choosing what not to publish will mean choosing intentionally not to provide content that doesn't meet accessibility expectations, even if it's something that you personally like. Now, as we think about inclusive content, we need to understand what types of issues most often pop up as accessibility red flags, besides GIFs. Listed on the slide are some of the most commonplace areas where we see districts get into trouble with their online content. Number one is color contrast issues. WCAG 2.1 AA requirements, and that's web content accessibility guidelines. For those of you, anyone who's unfamiliar with those requirements, dictate that colors must have a contrast rating of 4.5 to 1 for normal text and 3 to 1 for large text. Large text graphics and user interface components, excuse me. If your learning management system is browser-based, there are several color contrast checkers online, such as the WCAG Color Contrast Checker Chrome extension, and I use that extensively every single day. I check websites for accessibility, I check LMS for accessibility, documents for accessibility, specifically with color contrast using that tool, and I also use it when I'm pulling color hexes. Now pay attention to the color contrast on the next slide. I'm going to show you what an example would be of an inaccessible color contrast. Now, for some of you, this contrast may seem totally fine, but the contrast ratio is only 2.4 to 1. So it's inaccessible for both small and large text and user interface components. And users with visual disabilities or impairments may have a lot of difficulty reading this text as it currently sits on the slide. So I'm going to go ahead and change it back. So other common accessibility issues will include using tables incorrectly, such as for design rather than information. These can be very difficult for users that rely on screen readers. So try to make sure if you're using tables that they're simple, run one row header, one column header, rather than complex tables with merged cells. And if necessary, break those complex tables into a series of smaller ones. Improper use of headers. Screen reader users can navigate a page or document according to its headings. They can listen to a list of all of the headings and skip to a desired heading to begin reading at that point. So improper use of headers prevents those screen readers from the ability to effectively navigate your content. Empty links and headings. Empty headings can read improperly for screen readers, and empty links do the same. Missing alt tags and images. Users relying on screen readers might not be able to see images on your documents or uploaded content. So make sure that all of your images have alt tags to accurately describe what the image is displaying. Scan PDF files. This is something I was really, really guilty of when I worked for Webster University in St. Louis, until I learned a lot more about accessibility. If you're going to provide a PDF, make sure that it isn't something that you printed and then scanned as an image. Users who rely on screen readers will only understand that the PDF is an image file, and they won't be able to access any of the text in that document. So ensuring that your PDFs are documents that can be read with a screen reader unlocks a significant amount of content that would otherwise be inaccessible to those with screen readers. Videos without captions. Of course, those are going to be completely inaccessible to anyone who's hearing impaired. And appropriate reading level of text. This one's a bit more challenging to gauge, but users with cognitive disabilities and limitations may have trouble digesting content that's written in a way that exists beyond their comprehension level. Now, of course, required curriculum reading material could provide its own set of challenges, but teachers should ensure that their homework, their tests, their discussion board responses, and other published content is clear to students and written at a level in which they can understand. So as instructors are creating new digital content and remediating existing content, the best place to start when thinking, is this content accessible, is whether it can be understood by people with the most severe limitations. So the easiest way to look at content is to ask whether it's accessible by someone who's completely blind, completely deaf, or who can't use a mouse. Typically, if your content is accessible for those with the most severe limitations, then it should be accessible for those with less severe limitations as well. Now, this approach doesn't always address things like content being at an appropriate reading level, but it's still the best place to begin to make sure you're addressing severe accessibility concerns. Now, at the district level, the best way to address digital accessibility is to implement a digital accessibility policy. So consider the following when you're creating this policy. Number one, designate a digital accessibility coordinator. Define who in your organization is responsible for monitoring and reporting on digital accessibility in your online learning environment or on your website, or both, and publish a way for end users to report accessibility issues. Provide this person training provide digital accessibility training to all the appropriate personnel, but especially your digital accessibility coordinator now and annually. Ensure that all of your new content that's being published is accessible. So the best way to prevent having to go back and remediate content or fall back into a reactionary workflow of addressing accessibility is to ensure that your content moving forward meets the needs of those with access needs or disabilities. Develop and implement a corrective action plan. So have an audit of your digital content conducted and develop a corrective action plan to prioritize and remediate any issues found. And finally, monitor compliance. Compliance is a journey. Have your digital accessibility coordinator conduct checks or audits of your digital course content regularly, and make sure that employee has access to the training and the resources needed to be successful. So we do want to mention that Blackboard offers a solution to help take a lot of the challenges and guesswork out of digital accessibility and equitable content, and it's called Ally. We offer Ally for our learning management system, Blackboard Learn. We also offer it for Canvas and for Schoology, and we also offer it as a companion to our web community manager for anyone involved with their district's website content. Blackboard Ally scans your digital content and provides a detailed data on the accessibility issues within that content. It fully integrates into Blackboard Learn, Canvas, and Schoology, so you aren't having to go back and forth between multiple windows or multiple systems or logins to dial in and repair problem areas in your online learning environment. For our district leaders and administrators, Blackboard Ally provides live district-wide digital content accessibility reporting that allows for incredible insight and understanding into how your district is performing and evolving from a content accessibility point of view. For instructors, Ally provides the same reporting insights as above, but limited to their courses. The Ally Accessibility Report helps track progress and can help highlight problem areas and identify initiatives that can further help improve accessibility. And all new and existing content is checked. And checks are made automatically and in real time against our accessibility checklist based on key areas of the WCAG 2.1 AA standard. Also for instructors, Ally not only provides details on what makes a piece of content inaccessible, but it also provides what steps the instructor needs to take in order to fix that content. Instructors can learn by using Ally what's making their content inaccessible and then use that feedback to make sure they're creating more accessible content moving forward. And that's going to naturally increase their knowledge base and accessibility competency. And then finally, for end users, Ally scans all of your uploaded documents within your digital learning environment and automatically creates alternative formats in order to make sure that content is more accessible. This will solve that reactionary workflow for creating alternative formatted content for individuals and provide it for everyone, improving the overall learning experience. These alternative formats include OCR and tagged PDFs, electronic braille files, audio files, Beeline Reader, and for anyone who's unfamiliar with Beeline, it's a gradient text, so there's a color gradient that goes through the text. It's fantastic for anyone who has trouble with reading tracking or dyslexia. Mobile-friendly HTML, EPUB files if you're viewing content on an iPad or a Kindle, and then also machine translations in 49 different languages. So hopefully we provide a decent amount of information on different accessibility challenges your district stakeholders might face, the most common issues you're likely to see within your digital content, and hopefully how to begin proactively addressing equity of access in your digital learning environments, both by creating a digital accessibility policy and creating a workflow that remediates your learning environment's current content and works to proactively create inclusive content moving forward. Hopefully you also have some ideas of the different resources available that can help you address accessibility of your content as well. Finally, as we're all still dealing with the ongoing challenges brought by COVID-19, we've released a free limited version of Ally's alternative format tool called the Ally File Transformer. This free tool doesn't integrate into your LMS like the full version of Ally. It also doesn't provide language translations. However, it does provide you with the other 7 alternative formats for content that you upload, including Beeline Reader, audio files, HTML, electronic braille, EPUB, and tagged and OCR PDFs. So we hope this free tool is helpful for anyone creating course content for a digital classroom setting, as well as anyone publishing content for your school or district websites. So with that, I want to make sure we have time, a little bit of time for questions that anybody might have.
Okay, well, I'm coming back on the line. This is Leilani. This was awesome. You know, it's really an awesome bit of work what you've done with Ally, because obviously it's so critically needed. I think school districts have more problems with this than they probably know. So I'm challenging everyone that's on the line right now to make sure you're asking, you know, this question about equity, because most school districts have been reporting since the start of the pandemic that they lose kids, like they just go missing. Like, where did they go? Why are they not doing, you know, why do we have these achievement gaps now? And, you know, some of them don't show up. I mean, many teachers in the past year that we've had on webinars have said, you know, I spent a lot of time just tracking down students. Well, part of the reason that you've lost them is possibly because they just can't get into it because they've got a problem with the accessibility of it. So this is accessibility from a different direction, right? So single sign-on was one conversation that we just had before this, but this is a deeper content level conversation. So let me just check and see if anybody has any questions. Anybody's on the line right now, make sure you raise your little digital hand or type in something about what they're doing here, because this is a really big equity issue. But I do want to ask you guys, what are you seeing live when you go in to talk to people in school districts? And Wanda, you might be able to address that. Are people even aware of this issue when you go in, or you're going in like it's a cold thing? Like, wow.
Well, thank you for the question. It is an interesting one. What we see is when it comes to the understanding or even the knowledge about the importance of digital equity as it pertains to content is that people are kind of along a continuum, depending on their role and how close they are to these issues around maybe some OCR complaints that they may have seen within a district. What we can say, and what I mean is over the last, I would say 6 months, we've really gotten a lot of interest and outreach around helping districts meet, create different like professional development expectations around how do we build the base of knowledge, as communications departments and technology departments are working together based on guidance from the U.S. Department of Education and at the state level to really help inform around this topic. It's really about professional learning, professional development training to really start to build awareness around these issues. And then, a tool like Ally becomes so relevant because of one of the points that Nick made in his presentation around the guidance. So not only does Ally identify what those issues are, but it actually provides kind of live guidance of how to correct those issues, which does become one way to help build, that inherent understanding as you're going to do this the next time. So I think it's just all over the place in terms of how people understand this and what proactive steps are being taken. But I can say that the virtual learning era of the pandemic has really, magnified this topic and really helped us, spread the word and build the awareness that there are tools that can support students and families. And the other piece to it is that engagement piece that you just touched on, not only as we talk about like student engagement and the joy of learning and making sure that, kids are engaged and excited about learning because the information is consumable, but also from a standpoint of family involvement. And so when you think about English, folks that, are English language learners or those families who, English is not their first language, now you're able to have those families download information in the language that is preferred and understood by them, which allows them to then in turn be more supportive of their students' learning. So to take that agency and that control and that involvement.
Yeah, I think that's a really huge thing. I mean, you guys could just probably talk all day, every day about the language issue. Most districts are reporting now they serve a huge number of languages. It's not just let's have Spanish now too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The average district I'm talking to is on a daily basis has about 60 languages that they're supporting now.
Yeah, I remember Salt Lake City, Utah telling me something like 164.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild.
What?
Yeah, very, very diverse communities. Yes.
Yeah, very diverse, but it's essentially a Tower of Babel. You want to educate all those kids, but wow, you don't have speakers of all those languages. No one does.
Right.
So you need this. Well, this has been really excellent. Excellent presentation. I really hope people get into this, because I don't think normal's coming back.
Right. No.
I think we're gonna be hybrid forever, and you have to make sure that you're covering equity, right? Like this is a whole dimension to equity. And Wanda, you're totally right. There's a continuum. There's the mad scramble, and then there's the got to put all your little ducks in a row. And this is definitely a duck.
Yeah.
You got to put this duck in your row. So excellent. Thank you guys both so much. Melvin made a comment I just saw pop up in chat. Enjoyed it. He said, Nick, I enjoyed it. Very informative.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you,
Very good
Melvin.
job.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you very
thank you
much.
so much. We appreciate the opportunity. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to share our information and we'll reach out.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have a good
thank you.
afternoon.
All right.